Hello and welcome to another episode of the Life Capoeira. Very pleased to welcome our guest today, Calma from Capoeira Natural de Brazil. Welcome.
Hi, Kung Fu. How you doing?
Good, thank you. And yourself?
Yeah, I'm all right. Had a reasonably busy day, but yeah, all good. How's your day?
Also good and busy, just sort of standard.
Yeah.
So, your capoeira journey began about 2 years ago, I believe. How did you get started with capoeira?
Uh, I'd always liked the idea of doing some kind of martial art. I think when I was a kid, I really liked Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So I was a big fan, but never really did any. I don't know why, I didn't. But my daughter was on my first daughter, who's now 2, was on her way. And I decided it was the right time to I think it was just after she was born to try something different. And I thought, I'll give capoeira a go, something I've never tried before and I've always wanted to have a go at.
How did you first discover capoeira? Obviously, you were wanting to try it, so you must have had known a bit about it beforehand.
Well, so I'd heard of it. I can't remember exactly where I heard of it or how I knew of it. I have a feeling I grew up in Belgium, and I have a feeling that I either might have seen it somewhere, but my sort of concept of capoeira was that it was a Brazilian dance fight thing. That was kind of the depth of my understanding. And it sounded kind of up my street that it was like a martial art in some ways, but more fluid and more artistic. I don't know, a bit more creative. There was something about it that wasn't so like rigid or based in attacking motion and stuff like that. So I don't know if that's the question.
Oh, it did. And what was it that sort of captivated you and kept you with it? Here we are 2 years later, and you're still going strong.
Um, well, it's like a really rounded activity. So, I mean, I'm a yoga teacher. And in a similar way to yoga, it kind of uses all of your body and it's got a really big range of motion. But then it's not just grounded in physical activity, it's got the musical element, the like community element, and it's really quite amazing at helping you build confidence. Because then you've also got the dialogue element, which I learned. I think I was quite lucky with the people that attend the group that I attend and the mestre that I have, Dragao is really great. But the concept of capoeira being a dialogue and the parallels that you can draw from how you have an interaction in capoeira with how you could have an interaction in conversation. And I think that was really interesting. So it can almost teach you how to talk to people, not just how to move around and dance around or fight, however you want to call it, play. Um, yeah, it's like I feel weird when I miss a week, like I'm missing something.
I imagine the conditioning from yoga will be very beneficial to the capoeira in terms of flexibility and the core strength and so on. Have you also found the capoeira being beneficial to your yoga?
Yeah, I think they go, as you said, they go hand in hand. So usually my issue is more that I overdo exercise in general, so I'm just knackered. But yeah, it's certainly, yeah, I just think they are very similar in terms of movement patterns and range of motion.
And congratulations, you recently had your first batizado
Yeah.
on that experience.
Well, I had no idea what to expect. How did you find yours?
Mine was amazing. It was how long ago was it? 16 years ago. I think again, I went in not knowing what to expect either, really. I think it was in November and I'd started capoeira in June of that year. And I was blown away by it. It was amazing. So my instructor was professor at the time, he's mestre now, but he'd got a big group of instructors. I think one of his friends had sort of come over. Mestre Gatto was the sort of first capoeira mestre that I met, and I could see why his affiliate was Gatto, and it was an amazing event. And I think
Sorry, what does gato mean? Is it cake? Is it either cake or cat?
Gatto, yeah, not Gatto as in Gateux. It's the Gatto is in Portuguese for cat.
Okay.
And I could clearly see with how he moved and the lightness on his feet, and yeah, it was fantastic. And it's I think we'd been kind of told about the tradition. I know not all capoeira schools have it, but about being sort of taken to the floor when you play in your sort of first batizado harder and get your first quarter. And I wasn't really sort of too nervous about that. And in fact, one of the reasons I
Sorry,
was sort of
what does that mean? Play to the floor, you say?
get sort of a taken down like a sort of vingachiva or a banda or something or a hastera to knock you over, and that was kind of like your baptism, your batizado was being knocked to the floor by a teacher. I know not all capoeira schools do it, but that was we were told that that would happen, and it wasn't so overly aggressive. It was playful, so yeah, it wasn't designed to sort of hurt you. It was more just a tradition, a little sort of a rite of passage, um, and yeah, it was just it ended up being a very long sort of series of capoeira every day. So the normal lessons, and then with the mestre over, we had an extra lesson in addition before it all started. And I think it was something like 6 days in a row with just the regular classes and then the special class and then the Friday, Saturday, Sunday the event. It was just amazing. I love it. But I think part of the reason for reaching out to you is obviously you've just had your first batizado, and I know on places like Reddit, often every now and again it will crop up somebody's just about to have their first batizado and they've got maybe some anxiety around that or not sure what to expect. And with mine being so long ago, it's easier for me to focus on all the positives and everything else and have it in the light of the decade plus that's passed. You're obviously quite fresh from your first. And what would you say to people who are worried about their first batizado?
Well, it's quite difficult, isn't it? Because it's quite hard to remove anxiety for something that is an unknown. So you can get other people telling you their experience. Maybe that helps. I guess mine was because I had no idea that it was happening until kind of a couple of days before. I had no chance to think about it, and I didn't ask about mine. I think I got my batizado was like you said quite recent, so it was almost 2 years into capoeira, and I didn't really know how the process worked, and I'd kind of looked at capoeira not as a means of achieving like a grading, but just as a thing that I like doing. So whether I got a belt or not, I actually it didn't matter, which was quite different to how I would have been. I don't know. Well, pre my daughter anyway. I was just quite happy to be there, whether I had a belt or not. So then when I was told, I actually missed the first date. They'd planned it and they were trying to surprise me and said, "I'll make sure you're here for this week." And I was like, "Okay, cool." But then my wife had to go to London and I said, "Really sorry, I can't make it. I'm gutted." But I didn't know why. Anyway, so then Dragao told me, "Okay, you need to come or tell us you can come because we're going to do your batizado." And then I was like, "Oh, now I feel a bit nervous and I don't know why. I don't know because I didn't know what I was supposed to do or anyway. But mine was really nice. Like we just played. We had a hoda, instruments were played, and then I just played with everybody. It was tiring, but then I guess it would probably depend on the group that you practice with. So if your instructor or mestre is pretty like hard, you'll probably know that you're going to go into a slightly harder situation. Whereas if you're going in, your mestre is relatively kind and lets you take your time. Like mine's quite nice, and I've had like a couple of injuries like ongoing, and I've had to be quite careful with my wrist, and so I've had to play slower, which I think long term will be really beneficial because I've had to learn all the movements really slowly, which like it's easier to speed things up than to slow things down. But yeah, yeah, how to remove anxiety. I think you just have to do it. I think that's what capoeira is good for, is helping you overcome anxiety and timidity and realize that it's a game. It's not, it's like if you're going in taking it really seriously, then you might be missing some of the point of capoeira, which is to not take yourself too seriously, to be able to have a bit of a laugh, to yeah, connect with the people that are there. So almost like not making the batizado about you, which seems weird because on paper it might look like it is, but it's also about everybody else embracing you and bringing you into a family. So
Well, that's true. As you go up, it's when my Mestre Primo got his quarter, it was a sort of a big ceremony, but part of that was having everyone there and having a line of students right from their raw white cord all the way up the officina to capoeira chords, passing Mestre quarter along all the way up to the Strando and then to Mestre Primo. And I think that's one of the things that I like about capoeira as well is the people, and it is that dialogue and the energy that you exchange with different people and the playful nature to it. That's that playfulness, but there's that potential for that dangerous undercurrent potentially, and the just the joy of connecting in the game with the music and the person that you're playing with that moment.
Yeah.
So your apellido is Calma. Would you like to tell us about your apellido and what it means and how you came by it?
Well, I think this is the case with all apellidos, that you don't really get much of a say in what you're given. I think that was actually the thing that I was most nervous about, if I'm honest, is the various options that could have been selected. But Calma comes from calm, and supposedly I brought a calming energy to practice. I don't always feel calm, but that's supposedly where it comes from. Maybe it has something to do with yoga as well. I don't know.
And
What
have you
about
got
yours, actually? I was curious. Did you do Kung Fu?
I got this in my very first lesson. In fact, during the lesson, Primo said, Kung Fu, I'm going to call you Kung Fu. And at the time, I was unaware of apellidos. I was kind of aware of capoeira, and I'd Googled this and found out about the classes and went along. But obviously, my knowledge was only very superficial at the time. And I didn't understand the apellido thing. And so I thought the name sounded cool. And it was because my background, when I started with martial arts, was with Chinese martial arts, Tai Chi and Kung Fu with Wutan, which is based out of Southampton. And just the way that I moved, Remo didn't need to be told that I had had a history with Kung Fu. And so he could just sort of tell by the way that I was moving and going through the motions and things that when I first started, I was kind of doing not quite capoeira. I was more trying to make them sort of Kung Fu moves and making sort of Kung Fu fit into that. And obviously as time come along, the flow and the movement obviously became capoeira, but that's where the name came from, the very first lesson. And I think I put that on the social media as well when I sort of came back. So I've actually, because of that status where I put, it was like on Facebook, I think David Wood is Kung Fu. I sort of got the date for when I actually started my first lesson.
Oh, cool.
Do you have any goals with your capoeira, or are you just planning to sort of go with the flow and see where it takes you?
Yeah, the latter, I think. So I recently read, well, I'm reading this. I don't know if you've read it.
Oh, it's a fantastic book, yeah.
And that was quite interesting because
sorry to pause for our listeners who won't have seen that.
of course. It's the little capoeira book.
By Nestor
Yeah, it's the capoeira.
And it's the first of a trilogy that he's written. So there's a couple of other books that follow. I think the next one he's written is Capoeira Roots of the Dance Fight Game. And then I think the final book was a Street Smart Song. I might have got the order of those two, the wrong way
That
around.
sounds familiar. I think he meant, because this is the revised edition, so I think it was revised after he'd written the other two. But that was quite interesting, reading some of the history and the roots of capoeira. But then also I'm a yoga teacher, so I'm spiritual to my own depth, I guess. And it's interesting to read about the kind of spirituality and the energy side of capoeira. And I think how it used to be with capoeira was that it kind of just happened organically for people. They would watch, witness, absorb, and take stuff in, and then they would learn their game gradually and instinctively. And obviously, I go to a capoeira class once a week and I get trained in sequences and stuff like that. But I've tried recently to really watch other people when they're playing and to pick up bits of things that I like from them. And then, like in the book, there was something in the book that I thought was really amazing. It was the concept of not following what you've been taught in a way. So, like, for example, if you're in Jenga, to not just do that, to like come up, stand up, move, do something weird that's unexpected, put your own personality in. And that was quite nice because it sort of like set my capoeira free. And I'm still young. You know, I've only been doing it for a couple of years. So I still feel very inexperienced, a bit like a toddler who's, you know, still trying to figure out how to stand up. But it just kind of liberates you a little bit to just try things and not worry about whether they go right or go wrong. And I think that's how I'd like my capoeira to evolve, is to stay playful, but to just slowly get experience at reading people and situations and adapting how I play to who I'm playing with. But in terms of specific goals, I think just kind of an organic growth, really.
How have you found the musical elements of capoeira?
The instruments are hard. The berimbau is really difficult to play. I play guitar, and I mean, I have never learned how to play piano, but like I can have a go. But the berimbau is hard to physically hold to start with. I think if I could hold it and I can't remember what the coin's called that you use. What was that? Sorry.
The dobrau.
The brow. Getting that to like line up and hit the string, I find really difficult. But I think if I could do that part, then the instrument would be fine. But I love the music. I think it's a really like crucial part to the experience. Um, and yeah, I think it's part of the whole energy. If you just sort of stood around and played, you'd end up just fighting because there's nothing else to it then. And it's not the same energy. So you can really feel the difference when you've got, well, a song that people know. It really helps because people are all singing. And then it also helps if you've got someone with like a booming voice doing the like lead part. Yeah, I think it's awesome. And I like the subjects as well of some of the songs. I always ask what they mean because I like knowing. I don't really like singing things that I don't understand.
Yeah, it's definitely helpful to know. Um, Actually, just for our listeners as well, Desconfiado's podcast Singing for Survival recently had an episode specifically about the history of the War of the Triple Alliance and the song Paranawe, which is worth checking out if you're wanting to dive deeper into a particular song.
Okay. What's your berimbau like?
It's improving. I think the issue I've had with my hip, which has stopped me training, means I focus a lot more on the berimbau. I'm feeling much more confident with it. One of the things that came up recently is actually I need to start playing with different berimbau's and different berimbau's and dobrau's, because actually I've got quite used to the dobrau that I use, and I was just sort of given a berimbau with a stone to play, and I felt my performance wasn't as good as it normally was because I had this much thicker dobrau to use, and I need to actually start to mix things up. I've got quite used to my own berimbau, but I'm feeling a lot more confident in my musicality because I've had to train that more whilst I can't be training the movement side of things. The other thing that I have found exceptionally difficult, even before the berimbau, is playing music and also singing at the same time. My brain struggles with that, and it's always satisfying when I nail a new song with the berimbau at the same time. That is still a challenge for me all these years on, but it's this is one of the things I think that's good about capoeira and similar pursuits that don't have like an end. You don't complete capoeira. There's always
No, yeah,
more and to improve. And I think personally, I found the musicality harder than the physical side of things. I think my sense of rhythm has developed as the years have gone on. It wasn't. I didn't have a good sense of rhythm. I think at the beginning of my capoeira journey, whereas now as at a not capoeira related, but it was a singing therapy group that I went over a school holiday, and it was just interesting to hear the comments from the organizer of that, how they could tell I'd had some sort of experience with music. And I think actually I still don't quite see myself as a musician yet, if that makes sense, but I feel like I'm getting closer to being one with the
yeah.
capoeira.
That's cool. Yeah, no, well, I would say I am a musician, but outside of capoeira. So for me, it's been challenging to know that I have an ability to play music, but then not be very good at it. That's been challenging. So like the pandero, and is it atabake? Is that how you say it? Both of those I'm fine on because I've got rhythm and I can kind of, I mean, I don't know all the like advanced playing techniques, but I can quickly find rhythm. But the berimbau is just really difficult because I can't hold it. I think that's probably the hardest part for me. And then you get like finger cramp. I was told that, you know, if you get your own and then walk around just holding it, that's a really good way to build up strength. When you've got a 2-year-old and a dog, finding time to walk around holding a berimbau is it's difficult.
Well, again, I've got 2 young daughters myself, and so on Sundays I rent out a village hall with a friend, so we've got space to play berimbau without waking up, sleeping.
That's wise.
It's you know that's the issue is in a small house with children. Although I'm going to be brave, recently I've decided and just see if I can play quietly in the kitchen, because
Okay.
I'm able to get away with not disturbing them. If I
Braver than me. I practice by going busking for when I play guitar and sing because it's yeah. So you end up having to busk like unpracticed songs, so you have to get good relatively quickly, otherwise you just look really terrible.
The last question I like to ask all my guests is, what is capoeira?
What is capoeira? I think that depends on who you're asking, doesn't it? Or at what time you might ask that question. The time and place that you'd ask that question would change the answer. Um, I think to me it's a community or a family. And like families or communities, sometimes it's really beautiful and happy and joyful, and sometimes it's really jarring and a bit difficult and it doesn't look great or mm. But yeah, and it combines music, art, playing, dancing, like it's kind of life mirrored in movement. I don't know, it's more like real life than yoga is a lot of the time. For example, like I think yoga's got elements of mirroring certain things, but it's quite individual a lot of the time. Whereas capoeira is very not individual. And actually I teach kids yoga as well, and the kids yoga gets taught in a circle. So it is a lot more like capoeira and it's connecting and yeah, because you're not just talking to the person that you're playing when you're playing capoeira. You've got all these people around you who are supporting the conversation and adding energy to it and feeding it and then people swap in and out. Yeah. I don't know. That was a very long-winded answer. What do you think capoeira is?
Oh, there's the question, isn't it? Well, it's I think you're going to be something like episode 27 or 28, and I've had 27 or 28 different
Yeah.
answers. Um, I think for me, capoeira is just it's this wonderful, multifaceted thing that has so much to it. It's obviously there's the movement side of things, and that movement is it's a martial art and a dance at the same time. I like the description. It's a dance for fighters or a fight for dancers. You've then obviously got the musical elements that come with that, and then along with capoeira itself and the songs and the whole cultural history, there's so much of that backstory that goes back to obviously things like the slave trade, fighting oppression, and there are lessons that can be learned there, for today and the oppression that different groups are still facing around the world, and themes of fighting for freedom. There's a community aspect to it. There's the family aspect to it. That you've touched on yourself as well, and I think ultimately what is capoeira is what you make it, uh, because you've got so many elements that you can choose from, and you're you've got all this space that you can explore, and you've got all these different routes and these different corridors and avenues and places that are all interconnected. And for some people, they're going to really excel at the music, and their movement's going to be good. But they can take the music places. You've got others who are going to be really good all rounders, and it's also somewhere where there's always somewhere else you can spring to. So I can remember instructor Lua from our group was talking about, he was feeling really confident with the Birnbaum. So I think he's left-handed, but either way, he tried to play it with his non-dominant hand, and just these challenges and these things that you can do. And so I guess my answer is capoeira is what you make it, and there's a lot that you can make from it.
Mm.
You're the first guest that's asked me.
Sweet.
That's going to be interesting if I get asked again. How will it change?
Yeah. I guess that's how I said. I think your answer to that question is rooted in space and time, which is, I know it sounds really ridiculous to some extent, but it's really true, because your experience, what capoeira is to you at one given point in time, is not going to be the same. So if you ask me in 20 years' time, and my answer might be the same, but it might have other bits to it. I don't know. Interesting. Maybe set a reminder to get in touch with me in 20 years and ask me again.
I hope the podcast's still going. That'll be interesting.
That's fair.
Will there still be podcasts? We need to solve the climate crisis first, I guess.
Yes, that's a little bit more pressing, I think. No disrespect to your podcast, by the way, but yeah.
Thank you very much for taking the time to come on. Did you have any closing thoughts or comments you'd like to leave with our listeners?
The only thing being for me is, if you're feeling anxious about a batizado or even trying capoeira, I would say my advice is to just give it a go. The worst that will happen is you might feel a little bit embarrassed, but that usually helps get over anxiety, not fuel it, I think. And you might fall into a really amazing family. So I'd give it a go.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to have you on. Hopefully we can go live at some point. To our listeners, thank you for listening again. And if you'd like to get in touch, you can reach us on thelifecapoeira@gmail.com, or on Facebook and Instagram as well. And if you'd like to nominate yourself or any students or teachers that you know, then do feel free to send your suggestions in of guests that you'd like to have on. Until next time, ciao.